Good day, everyone. I will discuss about planning. So this section about planning, it says that planning is a purposeful effort taken by an organization to maximize its future success. Now, there are actually four functions of a manager, and planning is one of those. Planning is very important because the other functions of the manager, which are organizing, leading, and controlling, they actually rely on planning. So, in this module, in this lesson, managerial functions are also considered with some modifications. I think that's noteworthy to remember. And planning is important because it is a decision making on how the pathway of the company will or the organization is going to take. So there are a couple of types of planning. So the first one is the strategic planning. This is actually the very common. So you can say that this is the long-term planning. This is in order to ensure the organization is doing the right things and to address the business organization, what the business organization is currently in. So this provides a framework of the day-to-day activities of the company or the institution or the organization. And this actually takes long to achieve, like 5 to 20 years. So another thing is operational planning. Now, this is prepared in order to perform immediate tasks and objectives to meet the goals and strategy of the organization. So this is the one that answers the strategic planning onto a, for example, a regional level. No, okay. So this is actually short term, maybe 1 to 5 years, and this is immediate actions that are taken by the organization in order to move forward and implement certain activities that are actually part of the strategic plan. So this actually supports the strategic plan. And then you have business planning. This is actually to determine the feasibility of a specific business or a program. Business planning is used to make a decision about investing or moving forward with a program. Take, for example, if you have a immunization program in your drugstore. So this could be a good example of a business planning. For example, Watson's is implementing an immunization program. So a planning that is dedicated alone to that immunization program may be called business planning. And the same as operational planning, it covers 1 to 5 years. It is actually short term. What is midterm is what we call resource planning. This is actually to ensure that resources that are necessary in order to achieve the goals are actually available. So um, you can actually say that this is budget planning, but it takes more than a budget actually. It also covers other resources like, for example, manpower, um, what are the tools and the instruments needed for the coming years. Okay. So this is actually midterm, like 1 to 10 years. We also have organizational planning. Now, this is to ensure that an organization is organized appropriately to meet the challenges of the future. The key elements, including reporting relationships, definition of responsibilities, and definition of authority. So if you are actually trying to organize certain divisions, reporting relationships, coordinations, example, the pharmaceutical division for the Asia Pacific is being revamped into something that can be more effective. So this is actually the best type of planning that we can employ. Now, this is also midterm from 1 to 10 years. Now, there is another part of planning that we call contingency planning. This is a fallback or direction should the organizational strategy fails to do what it is supposed to do for the strategic plan. So this is actually a short to long term, depending on the strategic plan, because it is actually a backup. So contingency planning is very important. Now, this also includes risk management, which are actually part of the ISO. Now, it is important to note that there are um, process of strategic planning. We have pre-planning, the planning phase, and the post-planning phase. Now, for the pre-planning phase, these are the steps necessary to organize the strategic planning effort, or what we usually call planning for the planning. And then the planning phase, which is the actual planning phase. Now you take into consideration the SWOT, or the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats here. Now this may be referred to as strategizing, and ideas are actively generated for the organization, or in our case as a pharmacist, for a pharmacy organization. We have a post-planning phase. This phase includes the communication plan, on how you communicate the plan in order for everybody, even those at the bottom, will be able to know what the plan is, so that our vision, our mission are actually the same, no? And we understood we are for the same goal. And then implementation of the plan, the actual way of doing it. And it is important during this time that there is another phase, which is actually the monitoring, so that we will be able to know where we are at and what we can do in order to reach the planning. That's why we have some sort of mid-year review and then also annual review. So this is where operational planning also comes in, and also some more monitoring that happens. Okay, so stages of planning. Sometimes we plan in order to diagnose a problem, and that could be the starting point. Or if we want change and if we identify what needs to be improved, we actually take that as the first step, and then identify alternative course of action. You project the results that you want, and then you adopt the best choice, so that we will be able to get the um, the desired plan. Now, here are the steps. This is not actually general, but this is not actually specific, but more on a general point of view. Like, for example, you have to define or orient the planning process for a singular purpose or desired result. So it is important for planning that you have a vision and a mission, and we will talk about that um, in the next couple of slides, I guess, in the next slide. And then assess the current situation, so that when you know where you're at and you know where you are going, then you can actually plan the right path for the organization. And then establishing the goals, it is very important that you have a goal that is attainable. As we all know, we usually say SMART goals, okay? Measurable, attainable, and all the other letters in the acronym. So identify strategies to reach the goals. That's why in our strategic plan for 5 years at schools, we actually have supporting activities for a certain goal, and then establish objectives that support progress towards the goal. Now define the responsibilities and timelines of each objective, so that it supports the goals that we have, including those that are specific to the department. And then write and communicate the plan. Um, First, maybe on the key personnel, and then later on, you cascade it up to the lower part of the organization. If it is a school, you can communicate it as well to the students. Monitor progress towards meeting the goals and objectives, so that there is a check. No, from time to time, you are able to see how you progress with your plan. And okay, the next step would be create momentum. Now, how do you create momentum? You need a good story, so that the people will buy what you are selling, in this particular case, buy the goals that you are trying to achieve for the organization. So you create a mission, a vision, and including that would be a company slogan and many other things. But the most important part here, if you will see in the inverted triangle, the vision is on top. This is actually the organization wants to have in the future. If you see organizations, leading organizations, they always have mission, vision, and even schools. These are very important because it actually sets everything. Mission is the purpose of the company, what it does, a statement of the present going ahead into the future. So this is actually what do we have right now and where we want to go. So that's your mission. Okay, so uh, company slogan is actually very important as well. Like for example, nakakasiguro, gamot ay laging bago. That's actually Mercury. That is in order to communicate to the people that this organization provides new drugs all the time. So if they focus on quality, that is a really good message to promote quality. On strategic planning, because the most common type of planning is strategic planning. We need to note that this has been defined as the process of selecting an organization's goals, determining the policies and program strategies. So it can either be reactive or proactive strategic planning. Reactive is not actually ideal because you actually react to the stimulus that already happened, while proactive is you plan everything so that when there are untoward things that will happen, you still are able to go through, you are still able to implement things and put controls so that things will always go the way or close to the way that you want it to be. So this can be considered as an effort that enables optimal deployment of an organizational resources in order to minimize the environmental constraints. Okay, so example of strategic planning would actually look like this. You can formulate a strategy and then put on your goals, try to put in some objectives, and you need to support this with task and action plans. So as simple as that, but it could be very detailed like the ones that we do at school. But minimum, for example, like in an organization, a health organization, a government agency, you have IPCR, which is also elaborative, like the ones that you have in academic. But if you only have like a drugstore, it is important to know where you are going to, and you can make it really this simple. So as long as you know where you are going, that's actually the bottom line. So um, strategic plan template can be like this as well. So we can adapt this, and I understand that in academic institutions they have a very good way of presenting the academic plan. So that is also considered a strategic plan, and that is also a good format. But this one is also basic, so maybe we can isolate what is basic first and move from there. So, and this happens to be the basic structure. So what are the activities that happens during planning? You have formulating a forecast. You If it is a sort of a sampling procedure in the pharmaceuticals, you sort of have a cycle. So there's an example: establishing objectives, setting policies, determining procedures as well, so that in fact this is associated with placing a sort of a standard operating plan or a manual in order for things to operate very well and according to what is recommended or what is put in place. Developing programs may also be necessary, providing schedules and preparing the budget. So these are the activities that actually support planning. So you will see that these are interconnected to the next presentations as well. So what are the barriers of effective planning? Sometimes there's a failure to commit sufficient time to the planning effort. So you are not able to plan very well and don't have really good outcomes. So if you have a bad plan in the first place, the implementation will not also be good. So interpersonal issues such as struggles over power and politics within the organization, that's not actually good for planning, because those actually give sort of a selfish priority. So if all the priorities are selfish, then there's nothing left for the organization. Lack of planning skills, because how can you plan if you don't have the right thing, but the right skill? But obviously this can be learned over time. I started without any planning skills, but later on I was able to learn, and it's something that you can learn over time. It's not actually a big deal. Failure to plan far enough into the future. That's why you have certain types of planning. You have planning for a longer time, like your strategic plan, operational plan, you have contingency plan, and all the other types of planning, because this also is equivalent to the amount of time that you need to spend for the plan, specific plan. And constantly changing environment, you have to foresee the things that's going to happen. Like for example, you expect to have Christmas every year, and if you have a pharmacy, you can expect a lot of traffic during that day, or a store traffic if you have a pharmacy. So therefore you have to plan your staffing for that particular um month, December. Not only December, but it starts in September actually. So failure to implement owing to lack of time or lack of resources could be, but this is actually a very small thing. You can actually do a sort of operational planning even with small resources. KKB na lang, no? If you don't have the resources. Then failure to monitor progress. Okay, so without mid-year planning, things are very, very hard to grasp at the end of the year. So it's necessary to monitor, and formulating a mid-year plan is actually one of those. Lack of support from the top executive or the board of directors, because they're the ones who make decisions, and they are the one, in fact, to check on the planning if it is already working, where is it going right now, or is it working, or they should actually be leading the planning process. So without support from them, planning would not be effective. So let's go to organizing. So this is the next part of my report. So what is organizing? It is actually identifying the work, task, or activities to be carried out by people, employees, or workers in the organization hired to do the job, then grouping related work together so that it is more organized. And for example, I will take charge of uh, of vaccination, and the next person would be in charge on collecting the adverse effect. So these are the main activities under an immunization clinic. So that's part of organizing. And then it can also be said that it is arranging and relating the work to be done, so it can be performed most effectively. So that actually summarizes a lot of things there. And then what are the activities in organizing? Delegation is number one. And it means that you entrust responsibilities to others that are accountable and can be relied upon. Establishment. This is creating the desired work conditions for the mutually cooperative efforts of the people, and development of organizational structure so that we know the flow of command, and we know the hierarchy so that we know who is responsible for who, and whose work. So tasks that may be delegated would actually cover non-management work, because sometimes we feel that the people below us are actually somebody where we can actually give everything, but not actually, because if the work is management based, then the decision making should be from the ones on top. There is always a sort of responsibility once you delegate. Work that is routinary and repetitive may actually be given, for example, in a pharmacy setting, to pharmacy technicians, and so that the pharmacist can be free of other things, like, for example, counseling. Improving delegation is actually something that is good, because it can actually it can actually free, like what I've said, a certain professional a lot of time, like for example the manager. So but you need to designate clearly, you need to encourage delegation from the top, and it should not be on a parallel level, meaning to say you cannot delegate the delegation to other people. If you are the ones on top, you need to be responsible for the delegation as well. And because no matter how much of a worker you are, you need the help of other people, and you need to attend to the most important part and crucial part of the company. And if you try to do everything, you will not have time for these important things. So you really need to delegate. That's one thing that you need to learn when you are a manager. So Clearly defined performance standards is important, and all the other things when you delegate. You can also solicit advice, especially if you are a new manager. Ask for alternative courses of actions that from your people. There's no harm in asking because they might have other opinions and other ways of delegating it or other alternatives aside from delegation. Encourage discussion. For me, it's very important that the start of the week there is always a discussion on what we want to achieve, what are the progress, so that we communicate regularly and we are able to know what are the backlogs. So practice that with, of course, taking of the minutes of the meeting as well as discussing what was the backlog previously so that communication will be more uh, smoother and a good delegation will follow. Start with simple and easy to accomplish assignments. This actually applies when you are new, but if the relationship has been built for a long time, then it doesn't matter if you start with complex or with the simple ones. Get feedbacks to keep you informed of progress. Like what I've said earlier, encourage a regular reporting system in writing. Not only in writing, but it is also important to really talk to your people. uh, you can have a division chiefs meeting, a managers meeting, a unit heads meeting in the academy. So it's important. You need to talk regularly, especially if the business is more on delegation. What are the objectives of organizing? So to enable people in all levels of the organization to commit themselves to assigned work. I guess that's the most important part there. And also to make people more efficient in their idea of work specialization. Take, for example, you cannot place an accountant just everywhere. It needs to focus on the thing that she is good at, which is to organize the money of the company. To empower people to carry responsibility because they need your support. If you are the manager, you really have um, to empower people that they can do their work and they are accountable for their work. No matter how hard it is to do, you have to deal with it because that's part of the job. Okay, so other things includes to find more work to do in order to retain jobs and gain recognition. That could be one, although not the most important thing. Assign more people each manager can manage and lesser the results delivered. So if, for example, people would come together in order to contribute more, then there is actually more achievement of the task and require fewer levels within the span of supervision for greater efficiency. So, um, if in organizing, the units are organized very well. In all levels, you are able to see that the execution is clean and the supervision is actually very efficient. You can actually track everything to the small details. For example, what happened to this particular um, order or what happened to this particular case, like for example in a hospital basis, you can actually track it if the organization is being very efficient in what it does. So designing organizational structures and processes, successful implementation of a given strategy is more likely when the organization has functional competencies, is organized suitably for its technical, market, and competitive environment, or has developed appropriate mechanisms. So I think in designing organizational structure and process, you need to understand first the basic. Personally, what I do is I need to know what are the variables for this particular unit. Take, for example, human resource. How much is being hired every month? How many are actually regular? How many are contracts of service? By knowing these variables, you are able to measure the workload and you are able to see the capabilities of the people, the understaffing, the overstaffing. You will get to know, and by getting to know these variables, you are able to organize them very well and make the team more efficient. So setting organizational levels to a minimum, I guess this is very important because we don't want um, to hire a lot of people and or do a lot of duplication to the work. So um, we there is a concept of lean system, and lean system actually applies here. So the greater the number of organizational levels, the greater the tendency for communication between the top and the lower levels to weaken. So that's why, aside from talking to all the units every now and then, it is also important um, to promote lean system. The effective and organizational steps, the effect of organizational steps, I mean, when people coordinate their efforts with those other people, they divert their efforts from other endeavors. So yeah, that's actually true as well. So um, principle of split functions tends to force functional supervision to the next higher level, where work tends to be grouped around the strongest individual. So what happens is that the strongest individual are overworked because the organization is not actually very good, but concentrated on those who actually perform. Whereas if you organize it very well, the load is actually distributed well to the rest of the people. Principle of management emphasis: when supervising two or more functions, products, or units, a manager tends to show preferential emphasis in the decisions and choices. So that's also it. So in order to organize everything well, and in order to represent those things organized and communicate it very well, we have what you call an organizational chart. It's a diagram of functions, department, or positions of the organization and how they are being related. So I'll give you an example of an organizational chart later on. So I guess it's here. Yeah, this is the one. This is the organizational chart. So this is actually, I guess, from Pfizer many years ago. So that's actually an example. So when developing an organizational structure, you need to remember that there are primary expectations and secondary expectations. Primary expectation is that when implementing it, there should be greater productivity. So lean staffing, like what I've said, least cost of that is possible. You need to remember that. Utmost satisfactions to all concerned. Secondary expectation would be task accomplished and objectives achieved, overlapping and duplication of work avoided or reduced, jobs rationalized and filled by qualified personnel, managerial positions filled by people with required core competencies. So there are recent trends in organizational development, including the emphasis of business processes in contrast to functional areas. So that means that you need to focus on what you have right now other than the traditional business processes, because traditional business process might not be found in your organization, so you need to make your own in order to make effective. You need to make things effective. And then managing processes will make the organization essentially horizontal, flat, and lean without a lot of hierarchy. That one reports to who, and then to another one, and another one. So lean system is actually the key these days. And then the use of self-managing teams is increasing. Like I worked for approximately 12 years in a multinational organization. I was handling five countries, and handling five countries, I report to a boss who handles another six countries. So it's pretty much lean. It does not have a lot of hierarchy as well. So that's how modern things work these days. In the future, many companies will use teams as the basis for collaborative networks that link the thousands of people together. So I guess my take on this is that yes, that's true, but it requires a lot of technology in order to do so. Okay, so I guess the next topic would be staffing. Thank you very much for listening.